Have you heard? Marana has unforgettable festivals and events. From parades to fireworks, rodeo competitions to light shows, we'll show you a good time. Learn more about the Marana Signature Event Series by visiting maranaaz.gov/events.
Looking for fun, fitness, and relaxation all in one place? The Marana Aquatic and Recreation Center has you covered with dynamic programming for healthy lifestyles. With a Mark membership, you'll get unlimited access to our pools, weight room, gymnasium, indoor walking track, and group fitness classes. Meet us at the Mark, where we've got something for everyone. Join today by visiting maranaaz.gov/Mark for membership options and pricing.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Town, where I sit down with Marana staff to answer your burning questions about our beautiful community. My name is Terry Rozema, and I'm the town manager for the town, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk with the Town. My name is Terry, and I am your host. And today we're going to be talking about Tangerine Farms Interchange and the Tangerine Farms widening project, and who better to have in our studio than our very own Public Works Director, Fausto Burruel. Fausto, how are you doing today?
Terry, I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
Good. Hey, I got a little icebreaker for us. We'll start things off with a question about public service jobs. Tell me, how long you been in public service, and what was your first public service job?
Wow, making me think. So I've been in public service about 20 years total. I worked with the city of Casa Grande for a few years.
Okay, and what'd you do there with them?
So I was an engineering project manager.
Okay.
So
you started right out in the engineering field. So Casa Grande, where else did you go?
So yeah, I followed that up with a stint with Pinal County for about, I want to say 7 years. Mm-hmm. And then I've been with the town of Marana now just shy of 10 years.
Wow, fantastic. Well, it makes me feel kind of old, Fausto. I'm going to be honest with you that you've been doing this for 20 years. I hit my 40th year this month. 40th year in public service. My first public service job was a community service officer for the Grand Rapids Police Department. 2 years there.
Wow.
Then went over to TPD and worked there for a long time before coming here and working as the police and now the town manager. So I think that's probably a good segue into a little promo I'm going to do here before we jump into this. And the promo is for the Mark, the Marana Aquatics and Recreation Center. They are hiring right now young people for their very first job in public service. So listen up, moms and dads. If you got kids laying around this summer not doing anything, the Mark is in need of some employees. So lots of great fun jobs over there for people to do. Highly encourage you to go online or stop by the Mark, talk to some of the folks over there about what's available.
Yeah, and that's an amazing facility.
Yeah, it sure is. And some of your folks were directly involved in the management, and so it came out fantastic. So happy with it. All right, Fausto, we're not here to talk about our jobs or about the Mark. We're here to talk about Tangerine Interchange. And I'm going to read this question, actually. It's a pretty good question, a little bit long, but is there any additional updates? And I like this because it tells me that somebody has been listening to Real Talk with the Town, so they're staying up to date on things. Is there any additional update that can be provided in the timeline for the lane adjustments to Tangerine and I-10 interchange? While you understand that it is an ADOT project and we are at the whim of their schedule, which is not necessarily true, but there's some elements of that are very true. The daily safety hazards present at the westbound off-ramp feels like something that should have gotten the state's attention by now. What, if any, process is there for citizens to speak up about their concerns to ADOT directly? So I'd like to cover that at some point in our discussion. Can that be disseminated via an update on the podcast? Love you listening to the podcast. Or possibly just as part of one of the newsroom updates. So that's the context of for our conversation here today, Fausto. So can you kind of tell us, I know everybody sees the widening portion being done on the east side of the freeway, and that seems like it's making pretty good progress, right?
Correct. It's making pretty good progress. Before we jump into the question, in fact, They're doing some pavement out there as we speak, and starting early this next week, all traffic will be shifted to the new eastbound traffic, just a little bit east of where the railroad tracks are. So
Okay.
we're gonna, unfortunately, we have some work to do with the Union Pacific, which we'll talk about later. But a little bit east of the tracks, we are going to shift all traffic over to the eastbound lanes, which will put you a little closer to the Maverick, and then that'll let us start working on the westbound area.
Okay, so those lanes are on the southern portion, and they're going to be working on the northern portion for those lanes that are going to be the westbound lanes.
Correct.
Okay, very cool. So that part of it sounds like it's well under control, and that's a project that's funded by whom? Who's paying for that project?
So majority of that project is funded by the RTA, the first RTA initiative.
Okay.
So that's the Regional Transportation Authority. So that what you're seeing now at Tangerine Whiting is a continuation of the first phase of the project, which was from Dove Mountain, Twin Peaks, going east to La Cañada. That one was ourselves, Pima County, and Oro Valley were part of that project.
Right.
However, the town took lead and was overseeing that. And now the second overall phase was going from Dove Mountain, Twin Peaks west to I-10. So now what you're seeing is we further broke that into phases. Obviously, as you've known, prices have gone up on materials and just in
doubled
projects.
and more, right? I mean,
Considerably more, unfortunately. So
yeah.
we had to further phase that project. So it's approximately a 2-mile stretch, taking it from I-10 going east to approximately we tell everybody, the water tank over there by the industrial park. That's around where the roadway tapers back in to meet the existing alignment of the road.
Yeah. Give me an estimate on what that's going to end up costing us by the time we're all done. Costing the RTA, I guess, not really costing us, but costing the RTA. What's the total cost on just the widening project going to be?
We're approaching the 50 million mark for this phase.
For 2 miles.
For the 2 miles.
2 miles of 4 lanes.
Correct. And then we're looking at approximately that same price point to do what we're calling 2B right now. So taking it from where it's going to terminate over to Dove Mountain.
Yeah.
We're looking at about the same. You know, part of it is cost escalation, and there's also quite a bit of drainage that has to be contended with along this roadway corridor. We get quite a bit of flows that come off the Tortolita Fan.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that. I assume that those giant drainage ditches, I guess you would call them, that are running along the north side of the road, that those are for that express purpose.
Correct. Those drainage channels will collect all the flows that come off the mountain and across the land, and then convey them to where they ultimately go, which is eventually the river, but yes, further west.
All right. So that's coming along. It's costly, but it's going to get constructed. It's going to be completed. I think this citizen, and I've heard it from multiple citizens, concerned about how unsafe it is from their perspective. And I've certainly seen the backups that occur in the afternoons as people are coming home from work on the I-10 onto the off-ramp at Tangerine. So can you give us kind of an update on where we're at with that, and if there's a timeline for when we think construction on that might actually begin?
I guess to step into the question a little bit, and I know you kind of mentioned to clarify, it is going to be our project. However, it will be performed under a permit. So it's similar to somebody who comes and develops within our town, does some work within the right-of-way, they receive a permit. So we are going to be the ones that actually do the improvements to the interchange. But we have to go through the process with ADOT. And as part of that, they have to review and approve the permit. And then at that point, we can move forward with construction. I can tell you that we are very close now. We have submitted what we can call the 100% plan set. And actually, as of today is when they're supposed to receive the comments on that. So at this stage, comments are hopefully a little bit more minor, and we're able to address them. And I do know...
When you say comments, are they commenting like, hey, the sentence structure here is really nice. You guys did grammatically correct product here. Or what are the kinds of things that they're commenting on?
Some of it is just clarification. Some of it may be, engineering related, just questions on items. For instance, I think the plan set maybe didn't identify as clearly as they could, as we needed for some of the right-of-way alignment and some of the work that's going to be done. You also have the work that's going to be done immediately on, say, one of the ramps. But you also have an area that you're going to do grading, and it has to be within the envelope of the right-of-way. So there was some questions on that, on how that was identified in the plan set.
It's very involved, though.
Correct.
I mean, the numbers of iterations that have gone kind of back and forth between our engineers and designers and who are we using on this? Is this a SOMAS?
Correct. SOMAS is our consultant on this project.
So SOMAS is the consultant on this. And so when they're doing these things and working with you guys and forwarding comments or forwarding the plans over to ADOT, they're reviewing it, sending back comments, and it kind of goes back and forth until you hone it down to where it's 100% and everybody's in agreement on the 100% plans. Is that kind of how it works?
Yes, correct. That is how it works.
Okay. So I want to clarify one thing, because this listener resident talked about this being ADOT's project, and I think you stated that it's our project, but it is their facility, and that's why we have to get their permission, if you will, right? I mean, we have to go through this process and get a permit and have them completely review everything. And is it seeking their permission and approval to move forward? I mean, what is that?
Correct. Yes, to both. It's so everything along the I-10 corridor, including the frontage road, is within ADOT's jurisdiction, their right-of-way. Some agencies, some of the larger ones, do take over control of, say, their signals and things like that. In Marana, we do not. So the traffic signals, any of the traffic control devices, which are stop signs, things along those nature, anything within the interstate corridor and also along the frontage road, that's all ADOT. So I know we receive calls sometimes about, say, potholes or things like that along the frontage road. And we are very aware of those, and we do work with our sister agency with ADOT and let them know, hey, we have some of these issues. There's at times where we do actually actively step in and help out, just because we know that their manpower and their availability to be able to do that, and we know that it's impacting our citizens. That being said, we usually don't try to operate in that respect because we also have a lot of our own infrastructure that we need to maintain. In this case, we understand that there's the ultimate fix, as we know, is a grade separated interchange. However, at this point in time, the cost to do a grade separated interchange is substantial, which I know we've talked about, Terry.
Substantial meaning like 250 mil? Maybe roughly?
A little less for Tangerine because there's not as many challenges, but we're still probably approaching the 200 mark.
Okay.
And so what we're looking at doing is we all lovingly refer to as the Cortero treatment. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at making some abutment lanes on the outside of the columns and allowing more traffic to flow through. Unfortunately, that doesn't take the railroad out of the situation.
We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to hear from you about the railroad, and I think other people want to hear about that too. But keep going. I'm sorry.
No, fine. So yes, getting back to the permit, we are getting very close to getting the permit, and we're not only that we're still working on getting the permit approved, we're having active discussions with our engineer and with our contractor who's going to be performing the work on this project to start moving forward and establishing a schedule and an understanding of how we can do that. So what we call is a GMP, guaranteed maximum price. We're trying to establish those for the different portions of the project. One thing we talked about, and Terry, I know I've talked to you a little bit about this, is we're looking at maybe doing a GMP 1, if you will, for just the off-ramp portion. I know that's the person that submitted this concern.
I like that idea, Fausto. I like it a lot. And the reason I like it a lot is because I think that is the biggest concern for residents right now is the backup that happens on that off-ramp.
Yes, and it is a concern for ourselves, and also ADOT is aware, and it's a concern for them as well. So what this will allow us to do is we can pretty much do the westbound off-ramp as almost as if its own smaller project, because in the bigger scheme of things, we can almost do that independently. What that's going to do is it's going to have 3 lanes down at the intersection, but it's going to add substantial storage. So it may not completely eliminate backing up onto the interstate because there may be moments of something that happens, perhaps a train, but it should really minimize what we're seeing on a day-in type of activity.
Fantastic. So do you dare even do this? Give an approximate start date for any of that? Now, you can't. Listeners, listen to me for a minute. You cannot hold Fausto if he ends up stepping out on this limb and giving us a projected start date. You can't hold the poor man to it if we can't make it, because we do rely heavily on ADOT to give us that permit. But what are you thinking? Is it a month away? Is it 6 months away? What are you thinking?
I would like to say we're within 2 months.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, so the comments are due today on ADOT's side. Unfortunately, in the past, we've seen comments extend beyond their due date. However, I do know in speaking with some of their staff, they're doing what they can to adhere to that date. Mm-hmm. Comments we have received have been relatively minor, and my understanding is the majority of them already been addressed. Like the way they have a portal system where they can submit the comments, and our engineers can go in and see those, and they've already gone in and actively worked on the comments received.
Okay.
So there's some minor items that still need to be cleared up. The only concern we do still have is we haven't seen comments come from the structural group, and as you know, we're taking out the abutments, we're adding in the soil cement wall and doing all that. So we want to see what those comments are. So those are part of where we're going to install the abutment. So
That's a major piece of this project.
Correct. That's a very major piece of this project. So we're waiting to see what comments come back in that regard. And hopefully because I know our designers have worked on it, they've done these type of treatments in the past. So we're being optimistic that they've adhered and they've met all the criteria that were asked in the previous comments. So everything being said, if we're allowed to move forward and we receive a permit soon within this next month, then hopefully we can move forward with starting to do some of the off-ramp. And that's where I mentioned that we're looking at potentially breaking up the GMP, because it's going to take the contractor a little while to establish a GMP for all the work, because there's quite a bit of work that's going to be done on the interchange.
Sure.
However, if we can concentrate on the off-ramp, on the westbound off-ramp specifically, I think that'll allow them to move forward with making some of those improvements while we continue to figure out the total project, if you will. And then we'll be ready to jump right into the total project once they wrap up those improvements.
I think that's a great idea. Again, I know I said that earlier. I really like that idea, and I'm hopeful that we can accomplish that and get that permit here in the next month or so and get that thing moving. Now, let me ask you a couple of things. Number one, timeline for completion once we get the permit. But before that, I'm curious, are we going to have to close down the ramp completely when that work is being done?
What we've assessed so far, it looks like the eastbound off-ramp will have to be closed down completely to do that work.
That one's not as much of a big deal, right? I don't see that one being as big of a deal for us. What do you think?
Obviously, closing down any ramp will have a little bit of a challenge, but if I were to have my pick of the 4, that would be the one.
Yeah.
You have opportunities. Obviously, somebody coming eastbound can get off at the Marana TI,
right,
and circulate that way. Really need be, they could go past it, although obviously a ways, but to Avra Valley. But there's other ways to circulate, and the traffic utilizing that ramp, again, of the 4 is the least.
That's probably the least impactful, I would agree.
Correct.
Yeah, very good. Now, heading back to my second thing that I was going to ask about, once we get started on this, do you have an estimated time of completion once we actually begin? Once people start seeing dirt flying and bulldozers pushing and all that kind of stuff, I mean, what are you thinking?
What we've talked about estimated wise is a 12 to 18 month time frame to do the interchange work itself. But we say that
that's for the entire project.
Correct.
Okay, not just the off ramp, like that first phase, right?
Correct. No, the first phase, if we'll call it that, we believe that could be done relatively quickly. That's adding on additional pavement and really in the big scheme of things, not doing too much work. Obviously, it'll take a few months to get that done, but it shouldn't take a really long time frame. The other part of that is we're utilizing the same contractor that's currently mobilized and doing all the improvements on Tangerine 2A is the same one, Borderland in this case.
Okay.
So as far as like mobilization, all of that, they're
already
ready
there.
to go. Correct.
Nice. I like it. All right. So a few months on the off-ramps, 18 months or so on the total interchange project. So outside of that, I don't know if there's anything else before we jump into the railroad, but I want to jump into the railroad. So before we do that, though, is there anything else you can think of on the actual interchange itself?
You know, Terry, not really at this point. I think that pretty much gives our citizens and everybody out there listening an update about where we stand and that we're very close to getting a permit.
Excellent. Now, one thing that this listener did say, and I've heard this a few times, is if they want to express their concerns, and people have certainly expressed their concerns to us, and we take that very seriously, but they've said if we need to get a hold of ADOT, can we get a hold of ADOT? Now, I'm confident you don't have ADOT's number off the top of your head, but would that be an appropriate thing to do for them to reach out to ADOT and express their concerns about the safety of the interchange?
Everybody's welcome to do so. ADOT, similar to us, they do have personnel that deal with their communications and concerns and complaints that come in. Yeah, so they're welcome to do that. They're welcome to, online, I believe you can find their contact information. The Southeastern District has their phone numbers, emails, things like that. And also when we receive concerns that come in, we do have open communication and relationship with our counterparts at ADOT, and we do pass along those concerns when we receive them.
Excellent. If I look over to our producer here, Vic is sitting across from me, and Vic, we could probably find that number, put it in the notes for the show in some way. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do that, make that available. Not that we want people jumping down ADOT's throats. They're a partner working with us, and we certainly appreciate that. But if you do have concerns that you need to express, we'll have that available for you to be able to do. So now let's jump over and talk a little bit about the railroad, because we're widening Tangerine Farms, or Tangerine Road, not Tangerine Farms Road, but Tangerine Road, we are widening. I think I said Tangerine Farms a few times now that I think about it. But Tangerine Road, we're widening. It's going to be 4 lanes on the east side of the railroad tracks. And it's going to be 4 lanes on the west side of the railroad tracks. But at the railroad tracks right now, it's sitting at 2 lanes. And what are we doing to try and get that taken care of?
So yeah, Terry, we decided we were just going to leave it and just the 2 lanes.
Dude, I'm trying to help you out, man. I told those people they can't string you up if we can't get that project. But I guarantee you, man, if we go 4 lanes to 2 lanes to 4 lanes, they're coming after Fausto Burruel.
I think they're coming after all of us at that point. That was a joke, everybody out there.
Okay.
We are actively working with UPRR, Union Pacific Railroad, to move forward with widening the roadway across the railroad. Unfortunately, it's taken us a long time to get here, Terry. I mean, some of these discussions happened back, we're going back to 22, 23 when we first started having active discussions. I just want to make it clear, we didn't jump into this roadway design and not do our due diligence. We contacted ADOT well in advance, early on in the process, along with Union Pacific.
Yeah.
And we let them know, hey, we plan on doing this. As part of it, initially, we didn't anticipate that we would have to add anything major to the crossing to allow us to widen the road. When we looked at it, assessed it, we thought that there's a signal there. For those that don't know or realize, there is actually a signal for the railroad. It's a flashing signal that lets them know, hey, when they have to be able to, similar to vehicles, it lets them know to stop and when other activities are happening. We thought we had enough space to accommodate the roadway widening and fit within there. It took us a little while as we were really trying to to mitigate any need to do any further improvements or large-scale improvements. But it did get to a point where we understood UPR's perspective, and what that meant was that we were going to have to do what's called a siding track extension. In layman's terms, that means we have to add a third track across Tangerine Road going further west, or to the north, if you will. And what the siding is that's to allow a train to pull off to get off the main line as you have trains going in different directions. If you look at an aerial of Tangerine Road, you'll notice that there is that situation just east of our roadway. Our understanding is it meets the criteria right now based on the width of our roadway from the distance that's required. So that being said, if we widen the roadway at all, we're going to be within that or shy of that distance. So that's where we're at. So that took a little bit of time for us to go back and forth to figure that out. And then, of course, just in regular interactions with the Union Pacific, it takes some time dealing with the railroad. Long story short.
Fausto, my friend. It takes some time working with, that's the understatement of the year, my friend. It has taken a long time. I think you mentioned we started this back in 22, 23, the conversations, and trying to get this moving. So I appreciate the humility of, you indicating that, we're trying, we're working with them, but it hasn't been the greatest two-way relationship, I would say. And we've had to kind of escalate the conversations, I think, to higher levels, and that was involving the mayor and myself, and meeting with the president and other members of the railroad, and hopefully we get some traction soon. I mean, what are you sensing on that? I mean, you think that's going to do any good for us on this?
I'm hoping so. I've seen some recent discussion via email go back and forth that we are looking at having active project status meetings, a little more interaction between
That's
UPR
good.
and ourselves.
That's good.
So, yeah, I'm happy to see that. I'm really hopeful that, again, thank you to yourself and the mayor for helping push some of those buttons. Yeah, I mean, over the time of this, I want to say we started having discussions with them in mid-22 in regards to this project specifically. I think, as you're aware, conversations kind of slowed down to a halt for a while there. We actively approached the ACC, the Arizona Corporation Commission, and filed a petition to widen our roadway because we really weren't getting communication from them, just telling us, hey, we're good to move forward. That started the communication again. So from there, we've kind of moved forward to where we are now.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I know, kind of being in behind the scenes, not kind of a lot behind the scenes, and knowing the effort and energy that's gone into this on the part of your staff and you specifically to try and ensure that all of this lines up and we can open this thing up and, have 4 lanes completely open at the time that Tangerine is done and the interchange is complete. Are you thinking that that's going to happen? Or do you think there's going to be a lag there?
If I'm being brutally honest, I think there's going to be a lag. We're going to continue to push. We are having a meeting, a field meeting with UPR July 10th. Mm-hmm. That's to move to the next step, and that's specifically in regard to the third track that we need to install. After the point of having that meeting, then we move into the next design percentage, which would put us at a 30% design. Now, for those of you listening out there, in UPR's world, 30%, you jump straight to 100 from there. So it's not as many steps, but there's still going to be some time to get from there to the 100%. And we're still trying to figure out, are they going to allow us to build that third track using our forces or our consultant or our contractor, or if it's something UPR is going to do, which is going to add time. Ultimately, though, even though we build the track, they still need to do the tie-in where the third track actually physically ties in to the main line. I can't tell you the time frame for their forces to do that work. The other thing that begins once we get to a 30% design and we're basically approved for the 30% level, then UPR's consultant will start working on the signal design. That signal I mentioned earlier, that's going to shift a little bit as the siding is moving further. So those things still need to happen. Now, my understanding, their design shouldn't be a very long effort, but still, there's still more moving parts that need to fall into place.
Much more so than you would think. I mean, many more moving parts on something like this than I think a lot of people would think and understand. And even myself, who's here at the town, involved with conversations and meetings and discussions, I am still kind of blown away at all of the moving parts on a project of this nature. So greatly appreciate the effort and energy of you and your entire team, and hopefully ADOT can get us that permit soon. Hopefully the railroad starts meeting with us on a regular basis, and we can get some of these things completed. Anything else you want to highlight or talk about relative to Tangerine Interchange, the railroad, working with ADOT, anything like that?
I think you've mentioned it, Terry, but just to emphasize or let the public know that the town is doing our due diligence. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. There was a lot of forethought, planning, and early discussions that happened. It just, unfortunately, these time frames aren't under our control, and that's really where we're at now with it. We're doing everything we can to continue, and none of us want to see a 4-lane divided roadway tapering down to 2 lanes across the tracks and then having to widen again. So we're doing everything we can to help ensure that doesn't happen.
I did want to highlight, I appreciate that. Great comments. I do want to highlight, too, because we met with the president of the railroad last week before, something like that. And we met with one of their top government relations people here on the western portion of the United States. And talked a little bit, too, not only about that, but the frustration that many of our residents have expressed relative to the trains stopping on the tracks and blocking traffic for sometimes hours. And I found something out I never knew before. I don't know if you knew this or not, Fausto, but there's a sign at every railroad track going both directions, one going eastbound, one going westbound in this particular situation, a blue sign that has a phone number that you can contact, as well as a number that identifies the intersection of the railroad and the road. And you can call UPRR and tell them, hey, this train was here and it was blocking the tracks for X amount of time. Why is this happening? And apparently they actually answer that and deal with those. So there you go, residents. Something I didn't know. Something Fausto apparently did not know. Based on the look on his face, he's like, I didn't know that.
I couldn't tell you the number off the top of my head, but obviously as part of this process, I know what number is assigned to that crossing, but I didn't know about the blue hotline.
Yeah, he said there's a sign at every single railroad crossing. So there you go, residents. If you want to complain to the railroad about trains stopping on the railroad tracks, or put in a good word for the town of Marana and ask them to nicely work with the town to widen the road at the tracks so that we can complete that project. One more thing I'm going to add here, not relative to this, but this is something that came in about a different project entirely. A resident that asked about the Rattlesnake Pass overpass widening of Twin Peaks. And there is right now a temporary road that's being utilized. Actually, I'm not even sure. Are they even using the temporary road anymore?
Terry, it's no longer there.
It's no longer even there. So this resident asked if we were going to keep that there so that people could use it for biking and walking, and I knew that would not be the case, but why is that not the case?
Terry, that's not the case. As part of this project, along the frontage of the Saguaro Bloom, there will be a sidewalk placed, our typical sidewalk, and then from the eastern edge of Saguaro Bloom, we're going to have a multi-use path that goes all the way down to Silver Bell.
Oh,
it's
nice.
a 12-foot wide asphalt pathway.
Okay, so there's going to be sidewalks. There's going to be multi-use paths for people to use, but that segment of the roadway that was there is no more.
No more. That was one of the first things to go when we
Okay.
shifted traffic to the westbound lanes. they remove the roadway pretty quickly.
Okay. Well, you know what? I was just out there like a week ago. I didn't even notice that. So, all right. Well, anything else you want to add, Fausto, for our listeners on either of these projects or anything else that you think they need to be aware of on today's show?
Well, I can let our listeners know that we do have a CIP portal. If you get on our website and take a look at that, you can find it through the Public Works page, or you can also find it under the services in the drop down, and that gives you an up-to-date information on all of our projects. So if you want to find out about that.
So maranaaz.gov, go to Public Works. On the Public Works tab, you go to the CIP,
and then there will be a link to the CIP portal. And again, that gives you, for the majority of our projects we have going.
Excellent. Well, there you have it, listeners. I hope that we thoroughly responded to and answered this very good question from one of our listeners. And I thank you for joining us here today. Until next time. Submit your questions by visiting maranaaz.gov/realtalk, and we'll answer them right here. To receive notifications for new releases, remember to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Also, remember to follow the town on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on current news and events.